Here's what I want to do this morning. I want to talk about my cancer. And I want to talk about how my practice has helped me through this predicament I find myself in. I haven't talked a great deal about this subject because I haven't wanted to make a big deal out of it, for one thing. But recently a number of you have come to me and asked me about it. And the state of my health, unfortunately, has a great bearing on this Zendo in your practice. So I think that it's necessary for me to try and inform you of what exactly is going on, where I'm at as of this day, and talk about how I feel about it. And I don't want you to just sit here and listen. I want you to ask questions if you have any. If you're curious about anything, I will certainly try to answer. So I'm going to start by reading a poem. And this is a poem that for me, it has an importance for me, like the guest house does. Because it really sort of verbalizes how I feel about my current predicament. Not wholly, but in part. And I'll tell you something, this poem is one that I have used for problems other than the one I've got now. So listen carefully to it. This poem was written by Aldous Huxley many years ago. And it was spoken by a character in the last novel that he wrote, which was called Island. It's dark because you're trying too hard. Lightly, child, lightly. Learn to do everything lightly. Yes, feel lightly, even though you're feeling deeply. Deeply. Just lightly let things happen and lightly cope with them. I was so preposterously serious in those days, such a humorous little prig. Lightly, lightly, it's the best advice ever given me. When it comes to dying even, nothing ponderous or portentous or emphatic. No rhetoric, no tremolos. No self-conscious persona putting on its celebrated imitation of Christ or Little Nell. And of course, no theology, no metaphysics, just the fact of dying and the fact of the clear light. So throw away your baggage and go forward. There are quicksands all about you, sucking at your feet, trying to suck you down into fear and self-pity and despair. That's why you must walk so lightly. Lightly, my darling, on tiptoes and no luggage, not even a sponge bag, completely unencumbered. So I try to take what I'm going through it pretty lightly as I can. It's not always light. There are times when it's heavy. But right now, I am receiving little or no treatment for my cancer. You know, 5 years ago, just over 5 years ago, I had my first operation. It was on July 30th of 2009. I remember that because records departments keep asking you, when was your first operation? When was your second operation? My first operation was to remove a tumor in the transverse portion of my colon, which had been detected through a colonoscopy. And they removed that tumor. It was a rather large one. And the physician said that I had probably had it for maybe 5 years. But it had never bothered me. It had never been a problem. It still wasn't a problem, but of course it had to come out once it was detected. And after the operation was over, I was put on a round of chemotherapy that went on for 6 months. And at the end of that time, they turned me loose. And I felt pretty good. I took that round of chemotherapy pretty well. And then I started to notice a growth in my scar of the first operation. It turned out to be another tumor. They biopsied it, and it was malignant. And they did another colonoscopy and found 2 more tumors in my colon. So the same surgeon, Ray Shapiro, great guy, went in and took out all 3 of those tumors and sewed me up and put me back on chemotherapy for another 6 months. At that time, I wondered, well, the first round, it's been such a raging success. Why was I doing this again? I did it anyway. My attitude throughout all this was not to question anything. It was simply to do what I was told. I didn't look anything up on the internet. I never asked any questions.
I don't believe it.
No, I didn't. I intentionally went at it this way. You know, I'm not going to suffer over this any more than I have to. And the internet is a primo way to suffer.
Yeah.
Could you give me some Kleenex? Let's see, where was I? I was on the second round of chemo.
Not looking anything up on the internet.
Yeah, right. Well, you know, I saw quite a few doctors at that time, and after every interview that I had, they would always ask me, well, do you have any questions? And I would always say, no. I don't have any questions. I'll just, and, you know, my personality, of course, is exactly the opposite. And I understand that, I know that, and I was playing against my personality. So, I spent 6 months with needles in my arms, once again. And they turned me loose. About 6 months after that, I noticed strange sensation in my abdomen, right about here. It was sort of a stretching feeling. It was a scratchy feeling. It was a burning sensation. It was a strange feeling. I knew it wasn't right. So we went back in, did another CT scan, and found that I didn't have 3 tumors or anything close to that. I had hundreds of tumors. I had what was described to me as a gravel bed of tumors in the wall of my abdomen. Not inside the abdomen, but out here in the muscles. I had one additional tumor that was lodged in the omentum of my abdomen. The omentum is a sort of a fatty membrane inside your stomach that sort of connects all the other organs together and does various things, but nothing crucial.
Well, except that it's just full of lymph nodes. That whole apron of omentum is just full of lymph nodes.
Well, that was one of the benefits that I apparently seem to have in this situation, is the fact that lymph nodes, who cares? They've taken hundreds of biopsies of lymph nodes and cut a bunch of them out, and nothing. No cancer in any of in my lymph system. My blood markers were normal.
Yeah.
Or below.
Yeah, I mean they were below. They
They were
had been
below normal.
And they weren't. I'm just a person for whom those particular markers have no meaning. So they couldn't judge anything. It had the disadvantage because instead of being able to take a simple blood test and find out something, I had to go have a CT scan. And that's a bit more involved, and it's sure as hell more expensive. CT scans these days are up to $4 grand. Of course, I didn't have to pay any of that. I'm ashamed to say, I'm sad to say, I was a patient of the federal government due to my age. So I was told at that time, this was back last October, or September I guess it was in September, that there wasn't anything they could do about it. They couldn't go in and take out all these tumors. The reason that they can't do anything about it was because there was no way to, first of all, find them all, because they were all at that time, fairly small and scattered everywhere. And secondly, they couldn't take them out because they could not create any clean margins to sew back together. In other words, they couldn't sew me up once they went in there. So, I didn't have anything left. We had abundant evidence that the chemotherapy didn't seem to have much of an effect, and now the surgery doesn't have any effect. So I'm shit out of luck, basically. They did put me back in the chemo room because my doctor, my oncologist, wanted to have an opportunity to see if he could control the growth of these tumors with chemotherapy. And he put me on for about 3 months every 2 weeks, and then did another CT scan to find out if anything how much they had grown or shrunk. And he found out that they had shrunk, in fact. Some of them had, some of them hadn't, but some of them had. And he regarded that as a pretty good sign. So then he said, we can't maintain you on this every other week business because you just can't take that kind of stuff for that, for the rest of the time, what time you have. So he cut my visitations to the chemo room down to once a month instead of twice a month. And we tried that. But every time I went in there, I had increasingly greater reactions to the chemicals they were giving me. And it's really difficult to try to talk to people about chemotherapy because it is like nothing else that I've encountered in my life, and I'm sure that you haven't encountered in your life. And so having no basis of comparison, you really can't talk about it. You know, this definitely does not taste like chicken. So I decided about, I don't know, when was it? It was in June? Was it in June?
Yeah.
I said, I'm done. You can't do this. I was, at that point, you know, on my 4th round of chemotherapy. And you can't keep doing this forever. I couldn't. I don't know of anybody that has. So I quit, and that's what happened. I quit. I was scheduled to take a CT scan and said, forget it. What for? We don't need to know anything. We're not planning to do anything. I've seen my oncologist once a month for a 15-minute visit ever since. And the past 2 months, I've always had a blood test. Next month, when I go see him, I'm not even going to have a blood test. My blood tests have always been absolutely normal.
They show nothing.
And there's no point in doing that. And if they do show something, so what? There's nothing we're going to do about it. So, I'm in free fall, basically. I have no way of predicting how long this is going to take.
How do you feel?
I feel fine.
You're tired.
I can tell you how I am today, right now. I mean, I have got these tumors right here in this part of my stomach have grown. I know that, and that they have also gotten themselves organized. Before you couldn't feel anything when you palpated yourself, and the doctor palpated you. He couldn't feel anything. But now you can feel stuff in there, and it feels like I'm a little bit pregnant. I mean,
Just a little bit pregnant.
I mean, I can't bend over. I haven't been able to do bows, you know, for a long time now. And when I get up in the morning, I have a period of about an hour in which this thing is, you know, kind of angry. Sort of a burning sensation. But it's nothing that is very discomforting. I go most days without even taking any Tylenol. Some days, depending on how I'm feeling and also depending upon what I'm going to be doing, I'll take 3 Tylenol, and then, you know, I'm good to go. Now, it's not going to remain that way, because cancer cells have an unfortunate characteristic of growing out of control, even though mine seem to be growing rather slowly. Which, you know, is a good and a bad thing, of course. I mean, it's a good thing because I've really had a lot of opportunity to reflect upon this, and so has Linda. It's a bad thing because nobody likes to be slowly strangled, and that's basically what's going on right now. My oncologist said 10 months to a year.
When did he say that?
A year ago.
No, 2 months ago.
Oh,
2 months.
well, that's what he said a year ago.
Yeah, if I was untreated.
Yes.
Well, I'm
So this is,
starting
Sort of.
over.
the
Resetting the
mark
clock.
date is from when you stopped treatment.
Yeah. But he says he doesn't know.
Scott, yeah.
No.
The problem is that, you know, the course of this disease in my body has been atypical to a large degree.
Mhm.
Not in every degree, but in many degrees it's been atypical. So it's capable of doing anything. I don't know. Any questions?
I have a little comment.
Hmm.
You know, what you just said was that the hardest part is nobody likes to be strangled slowly. And, you know, Daishin, you have sat with many people in hospice.
Yeah.
You've been with many, many dying people. Many, 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 many. And not just about hospice and dying, but in all of our lives, I want to make the observation that it seems like ever since we're born, we're always kind of in a hurry for the next step, to get, you know, to go to the next step, to put the next foot in front of us, ourselves, and to, you know, see what's happening next. And so we kind of like push the river, or pushing the river all the time. And it would seem that this is, you know, another part of your life, another part of our life where, you know, it's like, oh shit, when is this ever going to end, you know, or whatever. And yet, you know, everybody in this room can tell you that, you know, it's been a blessing every single day having you, but even more having you with cancer. Because you seem to take a full step without pushing the river, at least what we can see. It is hard.
Well, I know that this is a drag for some people. I mean, it's a drag for me. It's a drag for Linda.
Yeah,
You know, it's a drag for my family. It's a drag for you too.
it's a necessary drag.
Well,
Take it lightly.
yeah.
It is like the guest house too.
Yeah.
Yes, too.
Yeah.
You know, you said you're in free fall. And in 12-step, we are saying you've let go of one trapeze and the other one hasn't arrived yet.
Yep.
And that's where you're gonna tell us how your practice helps you through this, right? I mean, that's your safety net.
Well, it is.
This practice.
It is, very much so.
It's a good image,
It's very much that way.
yeah.
Well, my practice has really helped me immeasurably. I mean, I credit, you know, most of my equanimity, which I have most of the time, by far the largest percentage of the time, is because of the practice that I have done in the past and the practice that I continue to do. You know, I would have to say that the main benefit that I have derived from all this is the fact that I have learned how to look outside of myself. You know, I am not caught up in within the phenomenal world totally, within the conventional world totally. Because, as Hoji pointed out, I have sat with a lot of people who are in the midst of dying, and I have interacted with them and their families.
I didn't point that out. Sacred did.
Oh, right.
okay.
And many of those, all of those patients experienced a great deal of fear and a great deal of confusion and a great deal of anxiety around that. But this practice has equipped me, and I think all of us, with the ability to be able to step outside of that and to look at the whole process of dying quite differently. You know, first of all, we understand that dying is a part of life. and that dying is a very natural thing. And as far as I know, nobody's ever gotten out of the deal. So, you know, one of the most important things that this practice enables you to do is to accept it. You know, acceptance is everything. And I've stressed this in many different ways in a lot of other talks that I've given, but I'm very serious about this right now. And you know, that was part of the reasons why I refused to ask questions. It's also I expressed my acceptance to my doctors when I said, you know, I'm already dead. That's an expression of acceptance. See? And for me, that's very important. And for reasons that I can't really explain, acceptance is magical. It accomplishes, I think it's a medicine in and of itself, and it accomplishes many things that make your life without a lot of suffering. I've come to appreciate that, like Ram Dass has pointed out many times, that dying is very easy. You know, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing as best I can, and managing the eventual pain that accompanies this type of thing. I'm going to do that right up until the time that I die. And I know that dying is, I've used the word extinction. It's an extinction. I can't think of a better word to explain it. You know, we live in the conventional world, you know, and we have all this language and we tell all these stories. We were talking about this, you know, a couple of weeks ago. It's really difficult to be able to drop all that and accept the fact that when you die, you're gone. As a matter of fact, even saying that is too much. It's just nothing. This is emptiness. This is total emptiness. It's called extinction for me. You know, we want the conversation to continue. After we're dead, we want it to continue. That's the reason we have, you know, these places called heaven. You know, we would like to think that we can end up there, because really, what is heaven? What is heaven? It's a continuation of life as we know it, really.
Only better.
Only better. That's right. That's right. What an absurd wish.
May I share something? He told me how several weeks ago, months ago, that if he can, he wants to come up here and sit when he dies. I said, oh no, don't do that. You'll be so heavy to get down. He said, oh, just push me over the edge. I said, I will not.
Just rolling out the back door.
Well, but we talk about it a lot, and one day I asked him, I said, does it bother you that we talk about after you're gone? He said, no, but it's hard to relate.
Well, it is. That's true. That's very true.
So,
Because I've got nothing to say about anything.
so I'm talking about it for me.
I've got, you know, after that point of extinction, I'm gone. I mean, I have no say-so over my belongings, all the stuff that I've collected.
Yeah.
Pretend you do.
And,
Yeah.
you know, I have no control over any member of my family any longer, or myself. I mean, it's...
Sounds like heaven.
No control.
Or my watering habits.
So stressless.
And I also want to, you know, I also want to include reincarnation in this too, while we're at it. because I don't regard reincarnation as being much different from a belief in heaven. Because I see reincarnation as nothing but a further attempt to continue life as we know it.
Only better.
Only better.
Well, if we get rid of
Only
the bad
better.
part.
Maybe worse.
Right.
I would like to acknowledge that in this period of time from your diagnosis as terminal, I guess that's what they call it,
Yeah.
that I've seen your practice change and develop. And I have seen you manifest more empathy and compassion than I have noticed before on a day.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I have, when you were talking about after you're gone, I was remembering Tuesday with Maury,
Mm-hmm.
in which Maury says, just before he dies, he says, after I'm dead in the ground, just come up there and talk, I'll listen now.
Yeah, right.
But I also wanted to say, and some of you may know this, my sister passed away, died on July 2nd of liver cancer. And she had 2.5 weeks from diagnosis to death. But I must say, when I talked to her on the phone, I talked to her 3 or 4 times, and one thing that was very evident was she had accepted what was happening. And she had a great deal of almost relief. And it was really, it was tough. And she had I don't know, I told some of you this, she had a green burial.
She had what?
A green burial. She wanted to be put in a box with no embalming and dropped in the ground. And I joined her family. She had 6 kids. She had 4 ex-husbands, but only 2 were there. She had 10 grandkids. 1 was a girl. The other 9 are boys. And there's an 11th one on the way. It's a boy. And when the process was, we walked a mile to where the gravesite was. And at the gravesite, they had 4 mounds of dirt, 1 in each corner, flowers around the outside, and some flowers in the bottom. 3 of her sons and her 3rd ex-husband, whom she was going to remarry, by the way, put her in the ground. The kids all threw flowers in, and then we all pushed pine cones and pine needles in, and then we all took turns with shovels. They had a bunch of shovels. They had one cut down for kids too. We all took turns burying her. There was very little said, but there was nothing to be said. It was a process of just saying goodbye. And then we lined the gravesite with rocks and pine cones. And on the way back, one of her sons picked up a rock, and it was agreed that if they found a big rock they wanted to, they could have her name engraved on it and then placed at the gravesite. It was and we walked back the mile too, by the way. The only one that was allowed to be driven there was my mother, because she was 94 and could not walk that distance.
Well, I don't plan to be buried that way.
That's fine. You'll just use up a lot of carbon.
How do you?
Well, I haven't really decided.